Jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana. Wageni mwakaribishwa Kenya yetu, hakuna matata.
And whether it is Europe or US, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. Okay, so that's the message.
Okay. World Food Day is not only a reminder of the importance of food to every person on the planet, it is a call to action to achieve food security around the world.
After colonization ended, we needed new structures to keep these countries where they were. Okay? And the first of those is aid. Okay? We give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. Okay? We're not giving them aid for much more except a little bit of infrastructure to make sure those raw materials get to the ports and are gotten out of the ground. But for the most part, we give repressive regimes money and power and guns to keep that system going. This is what it's fundamentally about. All the hypocrisy about transparency and democracy and bullshit like that, it's all bullshit.
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say
During the Bush administration, Gerson argues the United States started taking a new approach to aid, and you didn't pay enough attention in your book. In attacking aid, in Dead Aid, you didn't pay attention. Quote, America's AIDS and malaria programs during the 90s were focused, centrally directed, and results-oriented. Surely Moyo should recognize the difference between aid provided to oppressive kleptocrats and aid given to faith-based organizations distributing AIDS drugs, close quote.
I'm very disappointed because my one piece of advice is don't ever write a review if you haven't read the book. On page 7 of my book, I very clearly outline the 3 types of aid. Humanitarian or emergency aid, which goes in, for example, a tsunami or a flood or an earthquake, which I believe there's a moral imperative for us to act as a global society. The second type of aid I talk about on page 7 is what I call NGO or charitable aid. So this is the relatively small amount of aid where we send money for a scholarship, for example, to support a child in Zambia. I myself sit on charitable board. I'm on the board of Room to Read, which is a San Francisco-based charity, education charity. But it's important for us to understand what those type of interventions can and cannot do. So yes, they can send a girl to school, or in this case, yes, we can send HIV drugs to Africa. But longer term, these are not going to help these economies grow by the levels or rates of growth that we need them to grow to put a dent in poverty. Because yes,
pretty tough.
It's a band-aid. It's a band-aid solution. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, you know, the fact that 2 million Africans are on HIV drugs is a bad thing. Of course not. That is a good thing. But whose responsibility is it to provide those HIV drugs? And more importantly, are we creating an environment in Africa to make sure that in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, African governments are going to take responsibility for that? We are not Americans. We are not supposed to be taking into the American tax base. The American society does not operate by sitting around and waiting for handouts. Why should we, as Africans?
This decade is the decade of African independence. Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
Jesus